Polipede Works here, coming at you again with chapter 1074 of One Piece, titled Mark III. Now, like always, we're not going to go over beat by beat of what happens in the chapter because I feel you can read that yourself. I'm just going to point out some things that I found very interesting. So, first of all, let's talk about our cover story as we usually do. It is called Germa 66 Cold-Blooded Voyage, Volume 30. We're up to 30 pieces of this now. 3 men endlessly scrapping to be number 2. Okay, so this is basically Caesar, Queen, and Judge co-signing to the fact that neither of them can be better than Vegapunk, so they're all scrapping to be who's going to be the next one under him. Now we kind of see everyone in their sort of penultimate forms before they reach their final states that when we see them in the manga. So, first of all, Judge, carrying a spear, has reached his start, I guess, if you could say, of his Germa 66 LARP, because he now is wearing a belt buckle that says 66. He has an outfit reminiscent of what he wears in Whole Cake Island, and he has grown a mustache, and he's visibly older. Queen, we finally see his robot arm coming into play here. He's a bit larger, the mustache is growing, he started smoking cigars, and his wonderful, weird, like, horse mane of fiery hair has been traded out for the ponytail that you see him wearing during Wano. And then, of course, he has his goggles with the whole... So weird that it's like an X-band on his goggles. I never got that. But yeah. And then, basically, Caesar looks the same how he's always looked. It's just that he's now sort of all gassed up with his robe. So he's now, like, fully a gas man. And we see that because Judge tries to stab him, but it doesn't work because he's a Logia. But moving into our chapter, we are introduced to the namesake of the chapter, which are the Mark III pacifistas. It's said here that the pacifistas that were shown during Shabandi Archipelago and then featured in droves during the Summit War were prototypes, which is crazy because a prototype pacifista was strong enough to give the entire Straw Hat crew pre-time skip difficulties. Very interesting, very strange, but it also makes sense that they would have stronger, I guess, drone units in place to replace the regular pacifistas. This also makes Lucy and the rest of the Cyberfold agents very goofy because how in the world would you going to take out Vegapunk on his home island in the nest of all his creations? I don't get it. What's also very interesting is that the pacifista Mark III uses some sort of bubble shield, which reminds me, and this is very interesting. This reminds me of the bubbles that you see on Shabandi Archipelago, which is very fitting because, as we know, that was Kuma's like biggest moment in the story when he separated the entire crew. So it's kind of weird and very cool that this bubble shield represents sort of like the soap suds that you find on Shabandi Archipelago. I wonder if it's a modified version of those suds because it comes out like a bubble, and it's super durable because it's able to repel rocket missile fire. So that's super cool. And he does it in a sort of like a sweeping motion, kind of how Kuma does his sort of paw swipe when he's pawing someone away. So that's really interesting and really cool. Also, these guys are dripped out of their minds because they have kind of like a suit that looks like the Egghead suit, mixed up with Kuma's usual fit. I love their designs. They're so cool. They're so rad. They've got sunglasses to replace Kuma's usual weird white sunglass eyes. So I do like them a lot. I'm wondering if it's only one hand that you can do this this bubble shield thing with, because he does with one hand, and he has this other hand open, and we see the little porthole of where the pacifista lasers usually come out. So I'm wondering, is it a one-handed thing, or can he do it with both hands? Or can he like switch states? So if he wants to shoot a laser, he can sort of switch a thing in his wrist, and then he can shoot the laser when he wants to shoot the laser. But then when he wants to make the bubble, he can just make the bubble. Kind of interesting, but I do love this pose though that he's doing. But yeah, we'll have to see on that. So there are 50 of these things in pods, all numbered, ready to go. It looks like they're numbered 10 through 14, it looks like. It's kind of hard to make out, but I'm going to assume, based on the one we see being titled 41, that they go from 1 to 50, since this is a new model set. At least that's what I'm thinking. So Moving on, another interesting thing that I do like is that this is one of the few times that Luffy has made the butt of the joke because he was running around looking for Vegapunk, but Shaka makes note that he could see the entire area via the Mushi. However, the Mushi camera that is in Vegapunk's location was probably knocked out, so that's why he couldn't necessarily locate him. Another interesting thing, we see Zoro and Brook and Stussy in their egghead fits. Brook looks amazing. He looks like a astronaut, which is super cool. I love the big sleeves. Zoro looks amazing. Zoro looks great. I love how Zoro looks. I also like how the symbol on his jacket has like 3 little hatch marks on it. I don't know if that's intentional or not. I don't think anyone else really has the design. It seems like Stussy kind of does, but I can't really make it out. But yeah, also Stussy looks great in her egghead fit. And she calls Vegapunk Stella, which is kind of weird. She says, "Where's your Stella by? Did something happen?" I don't know. Why didn't she say, "Where is Vegapunk?" I don't know. That's kind of weird to me. Another interesting thing is that York is huge. York is massive. Also, Atlas is okay. She recovered. They fixed her up. But good Lord, York is humongous. I love her. I love York so much. She's so big, and Sanji's digging it. But she's so huge. She's bigger than Brook. She's bigger than Brook. She's bigger than Jinbei. She looks to be perhaps taller than Atlas, just from how this panel is laid out. It's like Atlas is wider, but York is taller. So York is the tallest Vegapunk satellite, which is nuts because I never even thought, because we never seen her like really standing up compared to normal humans. So this is quite amazing that she's this big. It is gracious. We see Zoro chilling out with Luffy because Luffy was exhausted from running around looking for Vegapunk, and Zoro was told to stay put because they make a very good point. He would get lost if he actually went with the searching party. What's very cool here is that while they're guarding Lucy and Kaku, who have been knocked out by Stussy, they reminisce about Water 7 and Iceberg. This is really cool because Iceberg and Water 7 as a whole is where we were introduced to the greater scope of technology in One Piece. So I do like the call back here with that. Then we see, which is also very interesting, Bonnie's interaction with Kuma's memory bubble. And we see in the memory of a child Kuma, the similar child Kuma that we see during the whole depiction of all the warlords as children. We see a Terabito, a celestial dragon silhouette in his memories of getting beaten out in some field. So I'm wondering why that is. Was he a slave of some sort? I don't know. That's weird. But it brings Bonnie to tears, and she can't take it, and she's forced out of the bubble. But she has to gain resolve, so she looks like she's getting back up to touch it again. And then we still see Kuma trying to climb the red port to Mary Joas, and his fingers are bleeding, which is still very reminiscent of when Luffy climbed Drum. I'm just saying, that's really cool. Another thing that's very interesting, who is the guy that blows up Pythagoras? Because we see Pythagoras walking alone by himself on some catwalk around some building, and then someone looks like comes behind them, and he blows up the entire area. And then the big moment happens. I know my friend that I talk to about this a lot is super excited when this happens. We see Morgan's flying ship, and we see Morgan's talking about how the world government plans to assassinate Vegapunk. However, since Vegapunk is such a large figure that has done so much humanitarian work for the world as a whole, assassinating him will not go over well. So the story is now sort of flipped to say that the Emperor Monkey D. Luffy, or the Emperor Straw Hat Monkey D. Luffy, has captured Vegapunk and is taking him hostage. And then we see who has a problem with that. One Nefertiti Vivi. Now, when we see her, one very prominent question comes to mind. Where is Karoo? Where is Karoo? I'm really concerned because we don't see him. I did a video about how I think Lucy was the one to assassinate Cobra, and it's very interesting that Lucy was a very prominent player in this arc, and now we're seeing Vivi right after. Very interesting. It's also suggested that Wapol had a hand in saving her. If you recall, I forget what chapter this was, because we see Wapol in this page as well, standing right beside Vivi, and she's mad that Morgus is posting false information about Luffy, obviously. So what's interesting about this is that it was said a while ago, I forget the chapter, but it was said that Wapol was giving Morgan's intel about something. I think in a video I surmised that he might have been giving Morgan's intel about how Vivi knew Luffy. And I think that might have either come out at the Lovely meeting as well, because I can't imagine what would actually transpire to get Cobra assassinated other than mentioning Luffy and then bringing up the questions about like the poneglyphs and the Void Sentry and all that. So Luffy and that information has to play a role in some aspect. But yeah, Morgans chews Vivi out and says, "That's big talk coming from a girl who was bawling her eyes out yesterday. Don't look down on me or my job. The news is entertainment." So, okay, again, where's Karoo? And how did they get here is what I'm wondering. Like, how did they get from Mary Joas to Morgan's ship? Because I guess Wapol has connections, but what makes it really interesting too, that I should point out, is that if you all recall, in Vivi's backstory long ago, I think this was either in Drummond, Alabasta, Wapol was actually the one to injure a child, Vivi, and then Vivi completely brushed it off and then addressed him like a very proper young lady, which was noted by Dalton as being a sign of Vivi's resolve and diplomatic nature. And that's why when people say other characters are diplomats, I say no. Vivi's the true diplomat, because that's in her backstory and it's shown throughout her time during the Straw Hats, during the whole Alabasta saga. So it's really cool that we see this relationship supposedly being mended, because Wapol most likely was the one to aid in saving Vivi. But I'm very concerned about Karoo, but we'll have to wait and see what has happened to him. So far, no break next week. We're still on for next week, and I'm very excited to see what happens next, because me and my friend, we have been waiting to see Vivi for years now. So it's nice to see that she's alive and kicking. I hope that we get some sort of confirmation as to what happened on Mary Joas during Lovely and who actually assassinated Cobra. I'm still putting all my chips down for Lucy, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. If you like stuff like this, please feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Polipede Works. And if you like what you see, I would appreciate your subscription. Thank you so much. See you next time.